Hello Internet, I'm Brian and I'm flying around the world. Except not quite yet. See, flying around the world is a fairly difficult task and not many pilots have done it. In fact, to date, only about 230 people have done it, with only about 130 of them actually doing it solo. Many pilots would love to fly around the world, but just don't know how, and I'm one of them. I've never really looked too deeply into it, although I've looked briefly into it. And it is a difficult task to do. It's not for the lighthearted. It's not for the casual person. But I want to do it. I want to join those ranks. I want to go around the world in a small single-engine aircraft all by myself. And this channel is going to be that. This channel is going to be a chronicle of me flying around the world, but more so getting to the point where I can fly around the world. You see, I'm a fairly low-hour pilot. To date, I've only got about 90 hours in power. And that isn't really enough. That's not enough to go and do it. So I'm going to need to learn a bunch of things first. I'm going to need to learn how to fly instrument rating. I'm going to need to learn how to fly through clouds and across oceans. I'm going to need to learn how to use survival gear and how to navigate in foreign countries. I'm going to need to learn how to select a good route, where to go. There's going to be places in the world I want to fly to that maybe aren't the easiest to fly to. There's also going to be other places that are going to be really easy to fly to. But knowing how to get those, knowing how to get there, knowing how to get to these places, how to fly around in them, how to navigate their legal structure, how to navigate their airports, how to navigate everything. Now, I started flying in about 2007. I ended up getting my glider pilot's license and amassed around 160 hours of flight time. After a few years of that, I got kind of bored and wanted to fly something else and ended up getting my power license in a Diamond DA-20. Since then, I've gotten rated in a 172 and now float rated this spring. But that's not really enough flying. So I decided I needed to do this, and I wanted to do this now and set myself a goal. I figure I'm going to be able to fly around the world either next year in 2020 or perhaps 2021. It is going to take a lot of flight experience and a lot of flight time, a lot of flight training. Now, one of the hardest parts about flying around the world is figuring out what kind of plane you want to do it in. And a lot of people have done it in Cessnas and Pipers and small aircraft like that. Some people have even done it in helicopters. I decided I want to do it in a fairly unique type of airplane, and that's an amphibious aircraft. And there's only been one other person who've done it before, and they did it in a Sea Ray. They flew from Australia up westbound towards the UK, and then just continued on. Well, I want to do it eastbound though, and I want to do it in a slightly different aircraft. The airplane that I've chosen to do it in is called a Lake Buccaneer, an LA-4-200. And they're a little bit older, 1960s era, 1970s era aircraft, but they're a little bit faster and a little bit more capable. They have a little bit more carrying capacity in them. And I think that they're a pretty good aircraft to do it in. They're very robust planes. They're metal so that I can leave it outside if I'm in a pinch somewhere. And now the reason I want to do it in an amphibious aircraft is because I want to be able to fly into weird places. So in a Cessna or a Piper or whatnot, where you're landing on land, you're kind of limited. A lot of those aircraft will only land on prepared strips. Some of them will land off strip, which is also rather useful, but some of the places I want to fly to are not necessarily prepared strips. So that's why I've chosen to do it in an amphibious aircraft. I wanted to be able to fly into places like the Sydney Harbor and fly and land in front of the Sydney Opera House, or perhaps in places like Venice, Italy, and hop out onto the piers as kind of a James Bond villain style. Landing in places like the Bahamas, flying around the islands there and just kind of enjoying the scenery, stopping on beaches. That's really interesting to me, while still not sacrificing landing in places like Telluride or Lukla in Nepal. These are interesting airports that I would love to go and fly into, and that's why I've chosen to fly in an amphib. So the plane I've chosen to purchase isn't itself ready to fly around the world quite yet. It's going to need a few modifications. One of the big ones is a bigger fuel tank. It's only got about 54 gallons of fuel in it right now, which will give it about 6 hours worth of life on that. But it needs a lot more. So I'm going to need to put in a big auxiliary fuel tank for one. I'm also needing to put in a engine management system. Right now all it has is a bunch of old steam dials, and you can do it with that, but it's not really safe. And that's why I'm going to be putting in an engine monitor on there. It doesn't have a GPS yet. It has a basic VOR on it. Its radio is pretty old and pretty grimy. So I'm going to need to do a bunch of these little things to get it to the point where I want to fly it around the world. But that's going to come later. Right now, my goal is to learn to fly the plane really well, learn to fly it long distances, and learn to fly it in a safe manner. I want to be able to fly to the Bahamas back and forth. I want to go to Sun and Fun next year, and I want to fly into Oshkosh. This year I drove in, or realistically I was bug smashing all the way across the country. But next year I want to fly in. Next year I want to land at the float base and then take off and go and land on the pavement runways. That's my plan. That's my goal. That's what I'm going to be doing over the next couple of years here. And I hope you follow along and join me on my journey.